right, hello, welcome. Let's see, recognize a few faces. Has anyone not done a workshop with me before?
Did you teach the spreadsheet one?
Yes.
I was just in the first class.
Okay, cool. Great, so welcome or welcome back. This workshop, if you've been to any of my previous workshops, is going to be a pretty similar format, and then it's going to be very hands-on. So I'm going to be talking a little bit, but you're going to spend the majority of time today on your computer doing stuff, actually trying out some of these skills. And if you were here for spreadsheets or Python or SQL in a previous quarter, this will all kind of feed into some of the projects we were doing in those workshops, meaning you can use any of the techniques that we'll talk about today with whatever other data analysis tools you're using, whether that's spreadsheet, Tableau, another visualization tool, even more AI tools, kind of however you want to work with data. This workshop is intended to give you some things you can do in a variety of different contexts with a variety of different types of data sets that will kind of set you up for whatever it is that you want to work on. Okay. So a couple of just housekeeping notes before we get into it. We're going to be using, I'm primarily going to be demonstrating in Copilot for today, but everyone at USC has Copilot and ChatGPT. You can use either or anything else that you have, Claude or anything else, for the purposes of this workshop. If you haven't already gotten to the USC tools for some reason, they're there at this IT services link. This is the tutorial that we're going to be following today. It's on my just on my little website today, rachelwhaley.github.io. You can go there and you're looking for you'll see something like this, and you're looking for the one that says prep data for analysis with AI tools. That's the one we'll be working through today. Like other workshops I run, if this is a little bit too beginner for you and you want to kind of go further ahead, feel free to read ahead and get going. And if you get a little bit lost, you can also sort of scroll back up and get into anything. So it's intended to help you kind of pace yourself a little bit. Okay. All right, and then the very last thing is because we are going to be kind of working with extracting some data sets, combining some data sets, it is helpful if you have Microsoft Excel downloaded. If you don't, that's okay. Whatever you have on your computer, numbers or even Google Sheets will work, but handy to have Excel, and you should get the latest version from USC if you don't have it already. Okay, that is kind of all the housekeeping. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about AI. I would love to get maybe just sort of like if you can give me like a 1 to 5, give me a hand 1 to 5. 5 is like, I'm super confident about using AI. I use it all the time, specifically for data. 1 is like, I've never used AI for a data related thing. Could you give me like a where you fall on that spectrum? Go 1.
Never data.
Never?
Not for data.
Not for, okay, that's totally fine. Okay, wait, I saw 2 over here, we're at 0, 3. Okay. All right, cool. Great. So a variety of things. This is definitely an area that a lot of folks are still learning about. This is an area that I'm still learning about. I work at a tech startup doing a data job, and I am still learning about sort of the best way to use these tools. Something that will be sort of a theme throughout today is trying to figure out what is a good use for these tools. What are they really good at? How can you leverage the strengths of these tools? And how do you identify which things are not as good of a use case for these tools, right? Meaning what things sort of still need some human judgment involved, things that are the tool is not going to be as good at. We'll encounter some of those today. All right, so the goal of this workshop is not that you leave with the opinion that everything should be accomplished with AI. It's also not that you leave thinking that nothing should, right? Like most things in life, there's kind of a middle ground. And the idea I'm trying to get across here is just to give you a framework, a way to think about it thoughtfully and use it in a way that will be most beneficial to you. Okay, so you can use AI for a variety of things. Y'all may be AI experts in other sort of areas, right? Some people are really good at making AI pictures and whatever they want or whatever. We're going to be very focused specifically on AI tools related to data and specifically preparing data for analysis. Preparing data for analysis, meaning Sometimes when you are taking on some sort of data analysis project, you are given just a single spreadsheet or a nice clean database where someone has already put all the information together for you. They've already done some of the steps to get it into a place that you can make charts or make a visualization or run a report, that kind of thing. This workshop is more focused on sort of the messy beginning stage. So when we talk about preparing data, what are some of those pieces that might entail? A lot of it, or the pieces that AI is really good at, is anything that's very repetitive and predictable. All right, it's functionally doing pattern recognition. Okay, so any of the pieces of data preparation that are kind of following a set of rules or even loose rules is where AI is really going to shine. So things like formatting are a great problem for AI to solve in the data world. For example, you might have a bunch of data that is dates, right? You column in your data set that is all dates. They might be in different formats, right? They might be spelled out. They might be short dates. They may be European format versus US format, whatever. Formatting, fixes, cleanup, etc., is a great use for AI. Another use that can be really helpful is extracting and aggregating data. We'll talk about some examples of this, but again, if you have multiple pieces of data in the same format and it's just sort of a task of combining them together, great use for AI there as well. And then anything related to helping you identify patterns. So it can use some kind of a basic analysis of, or an even more sophisticated analysis as well of various patterns that you might want to look for. And it can do that very quickly and in a systematic way, right? If you want to check if you have any missing data across all of your data sets before you begin your analysis, it's going to do a really good job of helping you look through that, understand what's missing, are there trends in what's missing, etc. Right? So those are sort of the types of things that AI is really, really good for in these types of projects. Whenever I'm using AI in a project, I'm trying to use it for stuff like that so that I have more time to focus on the things that are more important to sort of apply some human judgment to. That could be a wide variety of things, but I sort of broadly put them into 3 buckets here. One is just sort of the validity of the data that you're working with or the question that you're trying to answer, right? The question of, is this data set appropriate for the question or research topic that I'm trying to get into? Is not something that AI might be able to figure out. That might require a little bit of your human judgment. Is it from a trusted source? All right, AI can give you some citation links and things like that, but whether or not this is trusted data from a good source that makes sense for your situation is something that you're going to need to still use your own brain for. Okay. Bias detection, any biases that might appear in your data. This is especially important if you're working with any data related to people or collected by or from people. All right, do you see any sort of evidence of societal biases or systemic biases, even situational biases? All right, if the data was collected via survey, was the survey conducted on a religious holiday? So perhaps a certain group of people might not have been available or around that day to be surveyed, right? Anything like that is something that you might, again, need to use a little bit more human judgment to start to figure out. And then the last is domain context. So even kind of trying to understand what questions are you trying to ask of your data set? What underlying assumptions are you making about the data or the area that you're working in? These, again, AI can help you brainstorm questions, right? It can help give you some background information, all of that. But using some discernment here to figure out, is this a good question to ask? Do I have the right information to answer this type of question? Those are the types of things that you typically do not want to be outsourcing to your AI. Okay, any questions about any of this stuff? Does anyone not have Copilot or ChatGPT or something ready to roll? Okay, great.
With our UC email or can be with our own account?
I think this should all work for either. Yeah, no, we're not doing anything like super intensive. So yeah, I think either should work. Okay. So with that, we are going to start moving into some actual things to do, things to try with our AI tools. So the first sort of category of thing we're going to talk about is collecting data, right? As I mentioned, often when you're going to jump into some data analysis, your data needs to be in what's often called a tabular format. So you could think of this as like a spreadsheet or a CSV. If you're a little more technical, this could be the data is already in some sort of database, right? It could also be in some sort of other machine readable format. If you've ever run into JSON or HTML, other kinds of text files, that can also be a structured format. And in many cases, data you're using is already going to be available like this. But when the data you want to analyze is not already in one of these setups, it could be images, it could be audio, it could be all sorts of other formats. Or if it is formatted, but it's spread across many files or locations, AI is a great tool for helping to collect and organize that data so that you have it in one place to do whatever you want to do. So that's the first exercise we're going to walk through here. We're going to practice using AI to combine some data from different sources that is formatted very similarly, but it's stored in separate files, right? So I went poking around in the USC, some of the databases available through USC libraries. So you should go here. There's a tool in there called Statista, which has a variety of data sets on all sorts of interesting topics. All right, if you go to this link and scroll down partway to the bottom, you should see Statista. Let me pull up a screen share. You're looking for this guy right here. It may prompt you for your USC login, but it should let you in with your USC login. So go ahead and hop over there. Once you are logged in already, so leave your logged in tab open, you're going to look for this internet usage data. Okay. This is a variety of sort of a collection of a variety of data sets on topics related to internet use across the world. Once you're here, you're going to scroll down to this part about attitudes towards the internet. Okay. There wasn't like a more direct way to link you all to here with the login thing. So doing this. But once you're here, you should scroll down to this part that says attitudes towards the internet. Okay. So this is several different data sets from several different countries about sort of a population survey or some population survey of what people think about the internet. All right. So we are going to open up any of these, any country, doesn't matter. I'll pop open the US, for example. You can see this is a relatively simple data set. I didn't log back in to my USC email, which is why, or here, so that's why I'm getting this. You should not get this if you're logged in with your USC note. I have a pretty simple data set here, and I have some options over on the side to download my data set, okay? So what I would like you to do is pick any country, US, any of the other ones listed, and go ahead and download the XLS. That's our Microsoft Excel version of this data. And once you do that, let's see if I still have my previous one open here. All right, once you do that, you should get something that looks like this in here. All right, you should get something that looks like this. Okay, so it's got a few columns over here. These are these sorts of statements that they're surveying folks about. And then this is the percentage of people who agreed with that statement.
Excuse me, how can I get that? I click on Statista and log in with my email.
Yep. Yep. If you make sure you have a copy of this site open also, so that you can follow along and get the links. But yep, you're going to go here and then you're going to scroll down. Once you've logged in, go to this particular link. Yep. And then you're going to scroll down for attitudes towards the internet. Right. Wait a minute to do that. Make sure you get a file downloaded that should look like this. All right. Once you have one of those files, you should hop back over to this list and grab the files from a couple of other countries. All right. UK, China, India, whichever you want to grab. Same thing, pop this open and go ahead and do the download XLS file. That'll be your Microsoft Excel file. The result of that should be, you should have 2 or 3 files saved that all look something like this.
Mine's downloaded, but it doesn't have the lines when I did the XLS format. So
Okay.
it's kind of strange. I don't know. Is there a way that I can be adjusted?
Oh, that's just a view setting. Yeah, you're all good. And it's just, sorry, it's over in your other tab there, data.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, perfect. Yes, your file might have multiple tabs. This is probably what the data tab looks like. Okay, anybody have any issues downloading? Everybody got files? Okay, great. Cool. So what we are going to do is, first of all, identify that this is a great use case for AI, right? We have multiple different data files. They're formatted very similarly. I know in my head, if I were going to combine them, I'd just be copy pasting over and making sure all the lines match, right? That's all I'd be doing. That's a great task to outsource to AI. So in this case, what I would do is I would open up Copilot. And I would give it a very simple prompt. This workshop is not going to be about advanced prompting. There's lots of skill and stuff you can learn about how to do really good prompts. I personally am not the best prompter. So if you are and you want to write better prompts than I've put in my examples, please feel free. But we're just going to start with something super simple. All right. Our super simple prompt might look something like this: combine the data tabs of these spreadsheets into one spreadsheet. All right, that's the sort of prompt that we're going to give it. And we're going to attach two of our files, 2 or 3, however many you downloaded, that we downloaded from this attitudes on the towards the internet section. Okay. You can attach a file in Copilot or any other tool from here. You could do upload images and files. If you're using Copilot in particular, that will save a copy of whatever file to your like Microsoft account. So just be aware of that. You're going to come in here and you're going to hit upload files and you're going to attach your 2 files. Okay. Go ahead and give that a whirl and see what you get. All right. Once you run that, you should get a result that looks something like this. All right. So you should have your first column should look kind of the same, right? It's these statements that folks were agreeing with. And then you should have additional columns for whichever other files you downloaded. So if I downloaded the US and UK, these should be my 2 columns. I've got it all now in one data table. And this is the sort of thing that I could feed into a Tableau or that I could use with Excel or Python or any of my other data related tools. Did anyone not get a result that looks like this from their prompt? Yeah.
We get a lot. Just
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
I use Chat.
Okay. Admittedly, I tested all of this stuff on Copilot, not ChatGPT.
Okay.
One idea would be make sure you told it to just combine the data tabs. Oh, you did tell it
Yeah.
that. And the files you had to start definitely looked like this, right? Yeah.
Maybe I should check.
Yeah, it looks like it ended up, and maybe, I don't know if you had a previous chat going, maybe it tried to combine something else you were working with.
No, I
No?
opened a new chat.
Your chat.
Yeah.
The next thing I would recommend, so if you get a result that doesn't match what you're expecting,
Uh-huh.
is then I would sort of tell it what it did wrong. So for example, for yours, right, I've got a bunch of info. It looks like it might have included some of the data from that first tab. Is that true? Yeah, source, published by, yeah, all that stuff was in that first tab,
Okay.
or that like overview tab. So maybe you should, I would try something like, do this again, but disregard any data in, or like don't include any data from the overview sheet. The sheet labeled overview, try something like that. This is an interesting subject to teach a workshop on, in that it is a little bit of trial and error, and you don't always get the same result back. Even if you're using the same tool, if you do a slightly different prompt, you are going to get a different response. So this is very much more of a workshop than a checklist. How about other folks? Do other folks get like a different format, something that's like doesn't match to this sort of result? Some sort of messy file, or sometimes it sort of also gives you an error that like, I can't compute this right now. But again, anything like that. Yeah. Okay, let's take a look at what you got.
Kelly?
Ooh, okay.
Oh, hey. How are you? Good, thank you.
Interesting.
Nice to see you.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't know what this shit means. Did you get the information
Yeah.
well?
It looks
And I
like
tried that
Yes,
one.
it's fine.
Yeah.
How about yours?
Are you using
Oh,
Copilot or ChatGPT?
I'm using Copilot to
Oh,
keep it simple and following what she. Plus, I want to learn how to use Copilot. I don't really.
they all have like just some differences. Yeah, they're good at different things. Is that work better?
My biggest
Ooh,
thing, I
okay.
don't know
You
where
gotta
to
go look
find
in
stuff.
Copilot. Okay.
Been in there before.
Sorry, was it?
Like, I don't know where to find things in Copilot. Like like in ChatGPT, you can create folders and stuff. I don't know how to find and access previous inputs on Copilot.
Oh,
So I don't use it because I can't figure that out yet.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, this is like a worldwide learning curve that like
Mhm.
everyone is on at the same time, which is like an interesting.
Like, do you
I don't
you
use
save
Copilot
stuff?
a ton, to be honest. I use Claude more in my day-to-day life. But for me, I still get the sidebar kind of section like I do in ChatGPT with all my stuff on the side. Does yours just disappear?
Yeah, I don't know where it goes. I go to library and it's empty.
Are you on the USC?
Oh, I
like,
see it there.
Copilot?
I see it there now. That's weird.
I have found it to be very slow, kind of similar to like other Microsoft products, to be honest, that like it can like once I start a new chat, if I like open a new tab,
Mhm.
it can like that chat takes a long time to show up as in the list in my other tab
Oh,
and stuff
okay.
like that. So it's definitely a little less snappy.
Okay, I see it here now. It's weird. Maybe I was on like a different micro or Microsoft site.
Yeah, sometimes the screen is smaller or
Yeah,
whatever. It's
it
harder
was,
to.
yeah. Because this looks more like the ChatGPT database in reference to the dashboard.
Yeah, Copilot is also like built into a lot of their tools. Like I don't know the ages in this room, but if you remember Clippy from back in the day, which is a little like animated paperclip that would pop up and try to be helpful in like Excel and stuff, that Copilot also has like tries to do Clippy like stuff at times, which I find to be not as useful. There's actually a good article recently about how most people don't find it that useful in that format. But yeah, I just pulled up the chat for the purposes of this. I think if you are perhaps a bit savvier than me, you can probably figure out how to do this more in your tools or in the like integrated options. But yeah, I just went for chat for the purposes of this workshop. Okay, I'm very intrigued. I'm realizing I should have like tried all these things in a few different tools. So that's good feedback for me for the next time that I do this. The people at ChatGPT, were you able to get it to like, were you able to get it to revise what it gave you? Get it to give you more of a result? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. How many did you just have to prompt it like one more time, two more times? How'd you get it to?
No.
Oh, it gave you the right file the right time.
The
first time.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. For someone who usually teaches like programming and coding in Excel and stuff, this is interesting because for that stuff, there's a clear like right answer or like a couple of right answers, right? I could be like, if this doesn't work, we can specifically debug. If you put the same prompt in the AI and it returns a different thing to you, like that's one of the more challenging things about using this. And yeah, all the more reason to like focus on learning how to think about it versus like memorizing prompts or trying to like get your prompt to be exactly whatever. It might be different anyway. Okay, cool. So that's just one example. Obviously, this was a pretty simple data set. This one would not have been that hard to just copy paste over yourself. But I wanted to use one that you could see so that you could sort of see and check it easily. This is another case of just sort of how to think about or how to use AI. Even if you're doing a relatively straightforward task like this, you should always check against whatever sort of original file or always do some sort of check to make sure that the transformation that it did made sense. Okay, so for example, in mine, I have my combined data table. I'm going to go back to my United States table and just kind of spot check like, all right, this first one was 50, this last one was 15. Like they're otherwise in that order. I'm going to go here and make sure that my first one is 50, my last one is 15, and that those statements are in the same order, right? It didn't like mess up the order, but keep the numbers, any of errors like that. In general, you should assume, especially for any sort of data task where you're trying to be accurate, you should assume that ChatGPT is like the, intern in its first few days. All right. It might have some technical skills, but it also might like mess up some things. So you should check what it does in sort of the same way you would check if you had an intern helping you.
The order that ChatGPT gave me is different.
Ah, interesting. Okay, so did it get the correct numbers though into the correct rows?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the correct number, the correct information.
Perfect. Yeah, it might have just like alphabetized these or something. Yeah, totally. So it's another great like, oh yeah, I see that this has changed. Let me just make sure the data didn't get out of whack while it was doing.
It is asking me if I want to reorder the rows.
Oh,
So
interesting.
the statement match exactly between countries.
Okay. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, it's also, and it's like an interesting, like, what prompts you give it where it just gives you an answer versus when it asks more questions to you, right? There's something about like reordering is a good, like, it's coming back to you. Cool. Okay, sweet. Has anyone done something like this before, combined like data or documents with ChatGPT or similar before? Yeah. Has it generally worked okay for you?
Not really.
No. Okay.
I feel like it's better than ChatGPT to analyze the data because the second time I tried also gave me a like messy data.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting difference. I do feel like Copilot has a little more context for especially like spreadsheets in particular, because it's also like Microsoft thing, I don't know. I don't know if that's based on just my anecdotal experience, but seems like it might be your experience too. So maybe that's a good. Cool. Okay. Great. All right, so that was combining some relatively straightforward data, right? It was already in multiple spreadsheets. We were basically trying to get it in one spreadsheet. So helpful, but not ultimately too much rocket science. I want to talk about a couple of other examples. One is just kind of gathering data that's hard to find, data that's unstructured, or data that I don't want to use the term like doesn't exist, but trying to ask for information that you can't get in a clear way already. So an example of this, I did a few different queries kind of looking at top YouTube videos, top music, these sorts of kind of media related questions. Obviously, there are a few established data sources for these, right? There are charts. YouTube obviously has a bunch of like internal data on how its own videos perform, but not very much of that is public, similar to other streaming services, etc. We're not going to like do an exercise on this type of data because there's too much variation for me to be able to be super helpful. But when you ask even very simple questions like this, right? Like what's popular on YouTube in the last, month? I found this really interesting. It pulled together a bunch of different data sources and sort of explained to me that YouTube doesn't publish this stuff, right? If you ever tried to look for this, you already know that. But it pulled together a bunch of other tools and other kind of analytics tools and other kind of like rankings of video content. And it used that to sort of answer a similar question for me, which is what sort of videos have been popular lately. It's a slightly different question than this, but it gave me some categories, right? It said videos related to like movie releases coming out or any other like TV show releases or a popular category of video, for example. So this is interesting because this is like sort of an interesting like step forward from AI, right? Like pre-AI, if you had Googled this question, you wouldn't have gotten like a lot of super helpful results, or you would have had to sort of do the step of combining them. So I thought this was like an interesting just sort of category of thing. I don't have a specific exercise for this around it, but this is another good example of sort of when to use your human judgment, right? It ultimately like didn't answer this question that I asked because this data doesn't exist, at least not publicly. You're not a YouTube employee. So I got to use some judgment to say, okay, it answered a similar question. Is that good enough, or is that relevant enough for what I'm actually working on? Right? If I were writing my like dissertation on YouTube performance, this like sort of research that it provided me like probably isn't actually going to work for that, right? It's not going to be close enough to this question. So that's kind of one piece is like unstructured or hard to find, which I just wanted to mention. The piece we're going to dive a little bit deeper into as far as data formats and collecting data is data that is available but is non-tabular, meaning it's not already in a sort of spreadsheet, database, machine readable text kind of format. This is where you can use AI tools to sort of translate it into one of those formats. So a common case that you might find data stored in like a really inconvenient format is any sort of government data, any data that's published publicly. Some government entities, local, state, federal, whatever, have like a data portal where again, you can get your fully structured data, but lots of government does not, right? So if you've ever been interested in public sector data, this might be an interesting tool for you. For example, let's say you're interested in the city of Chicago and how much they recycle. All right, this could be maybe a question that you're covering for some sort of research. You want to compare it to recycling in Los Angeles. I don't know, one of many examples. When we go to this website, you might see that this data is stored in a table, looking pretty good. Why are we talking about this so far? This is in fact a screenshot of a table that someone has posted on this website. This is not an actual table, meaning I can't copy paste this into a spreadsheet, into a tabular form that I can actually use because it's an image. This specific problem, like screenshots of spreadsheets, is like very common if you've ever looked for government public sector data, and it's so annoying, right? So AI can help you with this, but not always. So I thought it might be interesting to work through an example of that, okay? So first thing I want you to try is just giving Copilot a prompt with this website. All right, so this is a copy of that URL that were in there. I gave it a very simple prompt, combine the data tables on this web page from 2020 to 2022. I think that's what's included here. Yep, so this is just 3 years of images of data tables. All right, and combine those into a single spreadsheet. And actually, I think I might still have my chat up from when I did this, but you should run that prompt on your own and see what you get. I will pull up the one that I did. Haha, okay, here we go. This is good. All right, so I gave this to Copilot. Okay, and here is what I got back. Let me know if you get something that's super different from this. This site blocks automated retrieval. So meaning the AI tool can't like ping it as many times as it needs to try to collect this stuff. And these aren't HTML tables anyway. So it's asking me to give it a PDF of that page or higher resolution of the images on that page for it to parse through. Okay. I don't know if anyone's is going to get a totally different response. Maybe you will. Maybe the Chat GPT, you might. I don't know. Split this out so I can get rid of this, which is like kind of funny, right? Like it's asking you to do like yet more work. Oh, sorry about that. Thing here. Okay, let's pop back to here. Okay, I actually tried this a couple of different times and I got like a few different answers. I was trying to see if I could dig up my other answer, but I think it's lost up too far in the scrolling. So I got a couple of things, right? One is like the website doesn't allow basically AI bots to come scrape it, which is increasingly common. And also that these images are actually not high quality enough for the AI to process, okay? This is an interesting thing that I've run into several times because obviously these are readable with the human eyeball. You know, obviously if it's on like your own screen and you're wearing your glasses, whatever, right? Like these are totally human readable. But if you look at them, they are pretty pixely. They're not like the clearest screenshots that were taken. I don't know, they might have been zoomed in a lot or something. So like no matter how many times I ran this, I was not able to get all of these years to sort of like to get the AI to process all of the years. I think I got 2 of them to run through. So you can try whatever it suggests to you, or you can try a couple different things. What worked best for me was just downloading the images from that site. So I just went here, right clicked on these and saved these images to my desktop, and then I uploaded them back to Copilot and I said extract the data from these tables. It was able to get most, but still not all of them that way. The other thing that it suggested to me was downloading the HTML and uploading that. So just saving the page and uploading that to Copilot. That did not work for me. You could also try taking a screenshot or saving as a PDF the whole site and uploading that. But I didn't think that would work for me, given that the images already were so much of a struggle. that would be even lower resolution. So I did not try that. So I encourage you to take a second and muck around with this, see what it tells you. Try giving it an image or try giving it the HTML. For those of you using ChatGPT, maybe you'll get a better or a different answer. I don't know. But I in general have had very mixed experiences with this. Even times when I've taken like a screenshot on my own computer I was like in this database view that was read only and I wanted to move it over to my own spreadsheet. I uploaded a screenshot thinking it was going to be super simple and easy, and it was very cranky. It basically asked me to screenshot individual row or column by individual row or column in order for it to be able to process. Which by the time I'm doing that, I might as well just be typing it in myself in my case. So I encourage you to play around with this. I also encourage you to play around with this with like different file types that you find, depending on like for data that's stored in like a PDF or some other form of attachment, depending on how it's saved or how much it needs to get out of images. Sometimes it can do a better job from files, especially if the sort of PDF is optimized or the whatever file is like optimized for this sort of thing, which is increasingly common. But I have run into stuff like this with almost every single time I have tried to do this sort of task. So I would say my review of this is like 50-50 helpful. It maybe saves you some time, but I usually end up manually punching some stuff in anyway. Did anyone run into any different errors, or did anyone have a lot of success with getting this data into some sort of spreadsheet?
The result that I have received
Yeah.
from the beginning is not correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it gave you a table, but not with the correct information in it.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
So now I upload the images.
Okay.
So I'm waiting for the
Just
result.
thinking, yeah. And that's the other thing with like files or images, it definitely takes longer unless you're using one of the like pro versions. Interesting. Okay. I also think different tools have a different sort of level of how likely they are to give you a incorrect result versus tell you they can't give you a result, right? I think ChatGPT is more on the side of the spectrum of it'll give you a result that like might be pretty far from correct. I think Copilot and Claude and some of the others do a little bit more of like, I don't think I can do this accurately, which is like an interesting tidbit. Anyone else have, yeah.
Mine's may have populated correctly.
Ooh, okay, that's cool. You're in Copilot?
I'm using Copilot. What I did when I downloaded each of the images, I noticed they were all named different things. So I made sure that they all made sense and just changed the name. So, or the year, that was really the only difference.
Okay.
And then one of them had like a stack, the 2021, it was like stacked. So I cropped it to make two files.
Okay.
And then I uploaded each of them. So basically all of them say recycling rates December 2020 or cart rates December 2020.
Okay.
And it created a table. Like it looks like it's okay to me.
Cool. Oh, yeah, that came out way better than mine. Nice. Okay, great. So you added even another step, which is before you had it help you with data cleaning, you did some of your own data cleaning.
Just to make sure that it didn't get confused because I feel like the file names could throw it off.
Yes,
so I just wanted to make sure that was like synced.
Yeah, that's a really good catch. The metadata of any files or information you're giving it actually matters a lot to these tools. The idea of having like a README file or a set of instructions that go along with any data you're providing is also really important. So yeah, it's going to use all that information, maybe even more so than a human would, right? A human would just glance at it and say, oh, these look the same, but part of what it's ingesting is the file name. So the more sort of pattern clues you can give it in that regard, the better. That's great. That's a good tidbit. And then I think you mentioned one other thing, which was the image actually had two different tables inside of it.
The way that they had it on the website.
Yeah. Right. And so you had cropped one, which sort of helped, probably helped it figure out its scope a little bit and figure out that it matched.
I split it so it was two separate charts.
Yes. Okay. So making it even more consistent. Yeah. So like a human step to an AI step to now it's ready for more human or AI steps. I think this is sort of very much the pattern that I've come to is just sort of, it's all about figuring out which steps are going to make more sense with what. Cool.
So with the non-tabular formats, we have to be prepared to just do a little bit more.
Yes. And I think the point that you made is right. If like often, if you just try this, or pretty much every time I've just tried this, it's been quite messy and it's taken me a lot of like digging through. So yeah, trying to figure out if there's stuff you can do up front, like make sure it's as consistent as possible is a really good idea. It then just becomes a question of like, how much work is it for you to do that and then feed it to the AI versus like for you, these are only 12 rows each, like for you to just punch in the individual percentages. In this case, it probably saved you a little time to do it the AI way, but I think that's always like an interesting, depending on how messy you are to start and how much data there is, you got to figure out where that line is. Cool. Has anyone else tried this with like images, files, audio? Has anyone like tried stuff like this before? Yeah.
But it failed for times, and then I need to manually type into.
Interesting, like your transcripts from different schools, so like different formatted like PDFs. Interesting. Okay, very interesting. Cool. Okay. Yeah, I mean this is all very similar to what I tend to hear. So it's definitely not a silver bullet. It can be a lot better than doing it fully manually in some cases, but really depends on what you got. Cool. Okay, so the pieces we just talked about here are sort of this non-tabular data, very unstructured data, even just data stored across multiple sources. I sort of put these all under the umbrella of collecting data or how can you use AI to help you collect data, right? I think it can be somewhat helpful here, really helpful in some ways, borderline helpful in some other ways, right? So the next sort of piece we're going to go through, if you think about sort of the life cycle of a data project that you're working on, you're going to collect all your data and you likely are going to need to do this step that's often called cleaning data. Okay, meaning is there stuff about your data set that is not not straightforward? Is it missing information? Is it not consistently formatted? These sorts of questions often come up under cleaning data. I would encourage you to think about this step more as cleaning and contextualizing, meaning there are some pieces of your data that are going to make more sense to clean, for example, make more consistent or fill in blanks in some cases. And there's also cases where based on the context of what you're doing, that actually doesn't make sense to do. Okay. So some, I think, pretty straightforward examples of data that can benefit from cleaning is things like data where you've got one sort of field or column that contains a bunch of information that can be split out, right? Common example of this is like a column with everybody's full name, and you want to be able to separate out first name, last name. Okay, that's like a common example. There's lots of others. If you have some sort of structured text that needs to be kind of split on based on some logic. There's also just sort of formatting was inconsistent, or maybe formatting wasn't validated on the data collection step. So this is things like if you ask for your address and you have a state field, right? Some people are going to type CA, some people are going to type California. All right, that's an example of like not very consistent data. If you try to then make a data visualization about people by state, these are not going to be combined, right? They're going to show up as two separate states until you clean that data or make that labeling consistent. Okay. Cleaning steps are steps that AI is great at helping with. Okay. Cases where your data might need some contextualizing. These are cases where it often comes up at this stage of what you're working on, but might not be as good of a use case for AI. All right. An example of this is lots of blank values in some fields or rows. Okay. This is a case where you want to think pretty hard about why those values might be blank. Is it that they were optional? Is it they were not applicable to whatever data was being collected or gathered? Is there a default that maybe makes sense to apply to these missing values? Could you sort of fill in a 0 or some sort of label that would make sense in the situation or not? Okay. A common one that comes up here is if there's a sort of a category, if the data or thing being recorded was intended to be categorized and there wasn't an applicable category, right? If you think about many online form or sort of thing might have a drop down for race or ethnicity, right? But if you have multiple races or ethnicities as part of your identity, there's may not be an option for that, or not an option that you feel is applicable to you. You might leave it blank. It would be inappropriate in that case to fill in some value or to like assume a certain value in that case for those values that are left blank. All right. So lots and lots of nuance here, lots and lots of different reasons why this might be, but blank values are a good case to think quite a bit about your context and not just ask your AI to fill them in, which like a ChatGPT will totally do, even if in a case where it might not make sense. Okay, same thing with where there's sort of a value that is like other, or it's like a, choose from options, and then there's like some text, right? That's another one that can have sort of a similar mechanic. And then another common one I see come up is if data is sort of missing or unavailable for certain date or time ranges. Okay, so this is where you could think about, is this just like a random sampling, or is there sort of an explanation for this? Was the data collected in such a way that weather affected whether or not it was going to be able to collect it? So it's not that there was no data on this thing on this day. It's that it was raining and the sensors don't work in the rain, right? This type of thing. Yeah, was there some sort of religious holiday? Was there a natural disaster in a certain area, right? So again, just thinking about these context pieces of why your data might be missing information is really, really important, and is the piece that, again, AI can be a little bit less helpful with. All right, cool. Okay, so we're going to look at this in a couple of different ways. Again, this is like, I think I focus on the sort of separation between cleaning and contextualizing because AI is going to be much more helpful to you at the cleaning category, right? So if, for example, in our Chicago recycling data, a question that you can ask about any data set, or that can be a helpful sort of prompt idea, is where does this data set have missing or unexpected values? If you're a good data analyst, this is the type of question you're asking yourself, but this is a good pattern recognition spot to use ChatGPT. Now, for example, in our city of Chicago data set here, this is a pretty small data set, so I can kind of like look at it with my eyeballs a little bit. And I can see, for example, in 2022, this yard waste column has a bunch of zeros. Okay, those are the only zeros in my whole thing, bunch of zeros. I might initially see that and think that I'm missing some data or something like that. But using some context, right, I'm going to say that that's January to May. I don't know if anyone here has ever been to Chicago in January to May. It's pretty cold. There's not a lot of, it's not fall. There's not a lot of yard waste going on. Okay, so based on context, this actually makes sense. This isn't missing data. Now, what's interesting is if I come down to the prior year and I look here at yard waste, I will notice that there is a bunch of zeros later in the year. There's zeros in July, August, September, October. Now, if you've ever been to Chicago in one of those months, you know that especially September, October, there's a bunch of leaves coming down. There's going to be a bunch of yard waste. So this zero doesn't actually make as much sense to me based on context. That's the kind of pattern that I can pick up with a small data set like this. That's the kind of question you can ask of your AI tool to sort of help you get a sense of what seems missing, what seems unexpected is a really good thing to look for. So you can try that with the Chicago data set if you still have that chat open and see what it says. I still have my that. Yes, so it told me that those zeros were not errors. And then it gave me sort of a long explanation. It explained the sort of seasonal part for those missing values that I mentioned. And then it also mentioned here it came up with some other reasons, right? The city might have some other type of recycling program that was being tried during this time. And so it just wasn't collected through this blue cart thing. Maybe they put out some other cart to collect it. Something like that. Or it could be just a reporting anomaly, though whoever was in charge of yard waste didn't punch in their number, you know, for this, so we have no data. So it gave me sort of a bunch of explanation for those sorts of things, which I thought was interesting. Some of those might be more valid than others, but would give me some idea as to where I could go look for a little bit more context. Okay. Cool. And then, yeah, just something to kind of think about, right? I encourage you to think about with any of these data sets or any data sets that you're working with. I think it's quite easy to get into the mindset at this step that the data just needs to be cleaned. And while that might be true, there are definitely cases where you just need a little bit more context instead. So just encourage you to think about that intentionally. Okay, that said, I want to get a little bit deeper into what actually cleaning some data looks like with one of these tools. So I have a fictionalized data set about metro ridership in Los Angeles. I would recommend maybe starting a new chat for this part. We're going to actually go through this data set and try out cleaning it. Okay, I have a data set linked here. If you're logged in to your USC Microsoft, you should be able to pop it open. It looks like this here. It looks like this. All right, so it is by date, by metro line, some more information about the specific route and service, location, revenue, etc. This is our sort of fictionalized but realistic types of data source that we are going to try using AI to clean up. All right, you can see a couple of things just from looking at this with your eyeballs, right? We already have some dates in slightly different formats in this column. We have some missing values in this column, right? So you can start to see some things that are a little off. There's a few different ways you could kind of prompt to think about this. Again, if you're an expert prompter, do whatever you think is best. I tried a couple of things like this. So give it that file and say something like scan this file and list the data quality issues that you see. All right, so things, I gave it some examples here: invalid values, inconsistent categories, duplicates, formatting. And specifically, I asked it to, as a starting point, to not actually make any changes, like don't actually make any edits, just tell me what those issues are and how important you think they are. All right, so give that, go ahead and open that data set and give that a try in whichever tool you're using or some similar prompt to this. The idea is to sort of ask it to help you identify what it thinks data quality issues. All right, so on the note of data cleaning, here is something that I got when I asked it about the data quality of the Chicago recycling data that we were looking at. It gave me some interesting findings, right? It did some basic checks. Are there missing values? The answer was no. Are there those zeros? Yes, and it described them as clustered seasonally, right? So it's coming up with an explanation. Kind of an interesting piece here about an inconsistent format for that recycling percentage, so that the way the value is being calculated seems to not match month to month, year to year, which I thought was an interesting catch. I didn't go verify that. If I were gonna be like working on this project more, I would go look at a couple of those rows and see if I found the same thing. But that's definitely an interesting sort of check, right? That's exactly the sort of thing it can check is the logic across a row consistent on all rows. For example, if these two values are supposed to add up to this value, does that happen in every single row? That's exactly the kind of check that this sort of tool is good at. Did anyone get a result for their Metro data? If you asked it about data quality issues, were people able to get to the Metro file? Okay, this guy
Yeah, it's good.
still thinking. Okay, cool. Sometimes when you give it a file, it takes.
Mine gave a few things.
Oh, okay.
I just asked that first question on the prompt though.
Okay, cool. Yeah, what did it tell you?
It said the highest priority issues that needs to be fixed so the data set is usable is the date format chaos.
Okay.
It's showing like the numbers, but some of them also have like the actual months written out.
Yep. Perfect.
Latitude, longitude swapped or invalid.
Okay, yeah, you're gonna see that going down, right? Most of these are like 30 something, but then occasionally there's 118, which is mostly what this column is, right? So, yeah.
And numerical field stored as text or malformed.
Okay.
On-time performance stored inconsistently.
All right, so on-time performance looks like it's this guy here. So yeah, it looks like in some cases it says 86.60%, and in another case it says 0.84, which with my eyeballs I can understand that that's probably also 80-ish%, but not stored in the useful format.
It said the line names are inconsistent, like line A,
Cool.
line B. Some of them are like uppercase, lowercase.
Oh yeah, some of them have a dash, some of them have no dash.
Some of them are abbreviated.
Yep.
It gave me a lot of stuff. Station names and IDs are inconsistent. Like Long Beach Boulevard is abbreviated, but then in another one it's spelled out Boulevard.
A classic. It's the Mike and Michael problem. Yes.
Weekend flag corrupted should be Y or N.
Yeah. Okay. It looks like there's a bunch of dates in this column for some reason, but yeah, presumably a column that says flag is meant to be a yes or no. Interesting.
And then service disruption column inconsistent. Examples N or Y are empty or free text notes in the wrong column. Heat advisory, police activity.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So this column here looks like it's the one that's more notes, right? We've got an occasional note or explanation, but as we go down, yeah, we're getting some blanks in here. So it's not clear whether blank means it's a no or whether blank is missing data, right? In this case, it looks like the no maybe got shifted over, or maybe it's just missing, unclear. This one, we got our date. It looks like the dates are kind of copied over. So this is almost like a copy paste error.
That's all like high priority. Then there's like a whole nother section of other stuff saying medium priority.
Yeah, cool.
So
yeah, so this is another great, I think this is a great reason to ask it to sort of lay out what all the problems are and specify that you don't necessarily want anything changed up front, right? Because you want to might be able to take a look. The step we just did of sort of like glancing at the data set and being like, yes, I see examples of all these problems, is something that I would want to look at. That last one that you mentioned, the service disruption, I'm a little less concerned about that because I think if I were going to make a chart of service disruption, yes, no, blank, I don't think that would cause any like great misunderstandings. I think it's pretty safe to assume that if that's blank, there was probably not a service disruption, right? So like I would kind of deprioritize that one, just depending on whatever project I'm working on. But yeah, getting my dates to be consistent so that whenever I make like a chart of this later, that the dates all go in the right order is probably a high priority issue. Cool. You want to give us an example of just maybe one of the lower priority notes I gave you?
No column contains structured data. So weather, rainy weather, operational issues, track maintenance, police activity. Some rows have notes in the wrong column. Example, in service disruption. It says it needs parsing if used for casual analysis.
Okay. Yes. So that meaning when a notes column is a classic example of this, it's hard to sort of say, okay, what % of these were due to weather, right? Because you'd have to go through and be like, okay, how many of these notes are about weather? You'd have to make another column that's like, yep, this one's about weather. And then you could run a percentage, right? Every time, weather reason equals true divided by the total number of these.
Oh, for like the formula. Okay.
Exactly. So you could imagine there's like a more sort of machine structured way where you could have a column that's like police activity, yes, no, all the way down, weather, yes, no, all the way down. That sort of thing. That's a little bit more kind of friendly for whatever kind of analytics you're doing. But again, this is where it requires some judgment on your part, right? If you're just writing up a report and this particular data set, I think is only like 200 rows or something, it's probably sufficient for you to scroll through and be like, there's notes on like 12 of these 200 and they're mostly about weather. That like might be fine for what you're doing, right? So you don't actually need to go do this fix of like adding all these columns in this specific situation.
Another one is the geo ID inconsistencies. Says some of them start with like LA dash like numbers, and then the others are all numerical.
Yes.
So it says the geographic joins may fail.
Yes. Yeah, depending on what these are, right? These could be, I don't know if these are like zip code, probably not zip codes. Yeah, these are like some sort of code. I don't know what these are referring to, right? I don't know if these are some sort of like metro internal designation, or these are some sort of like city census tract identifiers in some way, right? I don't know what that is. But yeah, if I were trying to join these onto something, it's probably either going to work for these LA dash ones or these ones that all start with 603, but probably not both, right? Cool. All very good points. So yeah, I think this is a great example of using it to help you find some things, using your brain to kind of verify or understand what's most important based on whatever you want to output, right? And then you can ask it to go ahead and help with those things. So things like the date reformatting would be very straightforward, making these names consistent, these station names consistent, even where it's like Boulevard or BLVD, that's probably also pretty straightforward, etc. Did y'all get anything different or have different stuff come up? Yeah.
It gave me
a lot of stuff. Yeah. Yes.
Some of them are similar with Kelly's information.
Okay.
About
anything like really different or anything that surprised you that it gave you?
boardings missing.
Boarding is missing. Okay. Let's see. Let's take a look. Yeah. Okay. This column's interesting for a couple reasons. First of all, it has commas in some of its numbers, but not in other numbers that are also 5 digits. So that could be like a little bit of a formatting fix as well. And then, yeah, it looks like it's got NA, just the letters NA there instead of number in some cases, which is interesting. Like that's another sort of like context question of like, okay, for this train line on this date, is it accurate that there would have been no one boarding the train? Like, is that like, was something going on that day? Was this train like, it says service disruption, no. So like that doesn't make sense. This does seem more like missing data, especially since there was a bunch of fare revenue collected on this line, right? That revenue probably wasn't collected from 0 people, unless they're running some sort of money laundering operation. Okay. So yeah, this is probably like that's a good, like, is this actually missing or was this just a day where no one rode this train because of some reason? Cool. All right. Well, yeah, go ahead and pick, maybe don't have it run all the fixes because that might take a while, but pick one of the fixes that it gave you and ask it to go ahead and make that fix. So whatever prompt you want to give it, again, I'm not gonna go crazy on the prompts, but like, great, fix issue number 1 or number 4 that you identified, something like that. Give that a whirl on your file if you have not already. Something else I want to point out, especially if you do a lot of stuff in Microsoft Excel, some of the fixes that we just talked about are totally doable in Microsoft Excel and would probably be faster. For example, fixing these dates, depending on the exact issue with your dates, it might be possible to just select them and fix them via Excel. I don't have this open in my editor version, so I can't try that right now, but right, if you were here in the Excel class, there's a number format menu right here. It can recognize a lot of date formats. That would probably be a faster way to fix this specific file for that specific issue. Now, some of the other issues it identified would actually be quite tedious to fix in Excel, or a little more tedious. Things like some of these values being flipped for the latitude, longitude. That would be a little bit more of a pain to fix yourself. But again, the AI will be really good at that specific fix. So that's a good one. So just something to think about, especially as you start to get a sense of like, when you upload files, it takes a lot longer to run. So what things do you actually want to wait for it to do versus what things do you want to be able to run yourself? All right. The other piece that I recommend running once, let one of your fixes run. The other thing I recommend running or asking it to run, especially if you have a more complex data set or a data set you're a little bit less familiar with. This is a concept called a column profile. You can do this manually. I've done this manually with many a data set in pre-AI days, but it's just a good practice to get a sense of, okay, for each column in this data set, what is the data type? Is it numerical, date, text, etc.? How many of those values are missing? So what percent of this column is missing values? How many different unique values are in this field or this column? What's the minimum and maximum value if it's a numerical field? Are there any crazy outliers or sort of unexpected values? And then suggest any transformations to make this ready. So this is similar to the data quality question, but it's going to give you a little bit more information that you can sort of draw some conclusions from. So for example, if you have a big data set and you have a column type that is text, but it only has, say, 5 different unique values, then you know, if you didn't already know, that that's sort of a categorical piece of data, right? If there's only 5 different designations for your hundreds and hundreds or thousands of rows, then you know that's some sort of category or sort of label type of data, which is different than text data like a name or something, which will be different for most rows. Same thing with minimum and maximum or outliers, just giving you some idea of what's going on here. Again, this is using that sort of AI like pattern recognition piece we talked about at the beginning. So just asking to give it a little bit more of a sense of what's going on. And when you ask this first prompt about the data quality issues and it gives you like 12 problems for what is ultimately not the world's most complicated data set, this type of information can also help you prioritize amongst those problems, right? If it suggested a fix for like filling in a bunch of those NA values, and you do this and that's only like 1% of all your rows even have that problem, that can help you sort of prioritize like, okay, if it's a very small fraction of my data that's impacted, I don't necessarily need to pursue that fix or prioritize it as much. So you can kind of use these two together depending on, or either one or together, kind of depending on your data set situation. Anyone get any fixes to run successfully? Yeah?
There's errors, but it fixed some things.
Okay. Cool. Did it give you the errors kind of overall or like row by row in your?
No, I'm just having to kind of figure it out.
Okay.
Like all the dates, it just took them all out and put a bunch of like hashtags. So it wiped the dates out completely.
Okay.
It did for the lines, the B column, it made everything like capitalized there.
Okay, cool. Pretty straightforward.
It looked like it ignored the other 2 columns.
Okay.
The GeoID is the furthest I got. It changed some of the ones that had like the shorter numbers.
Okay.
Well, maybe that's because it was smaller.
Is this what you were seeing for the dates? This sort of
It
like
expanded. Never mind. I
this,
think it ignored that one too.
the sort of like hashtag thing is what you were seeing
Yeah,
for
it
your
made
dates?
all of them hashtags.
Did you expand your column a little bit further over? So it's just a column.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it changed it. So it's got dates.
Okay, cool. Did it make them all consistent format?
Yeah, and it's got like a time. I guess that's what the zeros are for. Like
Oh, interesting. Okay.
everything at midnight.
Cool. Okay, so consistent format, maybe the time might not be the most relevant, right? It wasn't included in our original data, so yeah, it could be up to you as to whether you include that or just revert it back to just a date. But yeah, cool. Did that work for either of y'all? Did you get any results from it?
I'm still thinking because it's everything.
Oh, it might be thinking for a while.
I know.
And there's only 200 rows too, so that's another
Oh my
like
God.
thinking about the like compute and time stuff and what model you're using and all of this is a whole nother layer.
I wanted to know how fast it is.
Oh man, is that the university or ChatGPT or just your personal?
My personal.
Ah, okay. So depending on which one you have, could be a little slow. Did you have anything interesting from yours?
To like standardize the dates into month, date.
Oh, so you kind of gave it a little more direction on how you wanted them formatted. Okay.
And also, I asked him to remove all the duplicates, and he says that he found one exact the same row of duplicates.
Oh, okay. Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. It's finding a duplicate where it's like the whole row is exactly the same is also great. Yeah, great use. Okay, nice. Cool. And yeah, I think that what you mentioned is a great. So for you, when it mentioned or when it did the date cleanup specifically, the format, it added a time, right? It was making some assumptions about the format. It sounds like you were a little more specific about like, no, I specifically want like month, day, year. I know what format I want. ultimately doesn't matter for this, like both of those are accurate, but yeah, the more direction that you give it, the fewer assumptions it's gonna make about what you want,
I
right?
have a question.
Yeah.
For the weekend flag column on the messy, if it
Mhm.
has a date, does that equate to yes?
That's a great question. I would guess, well, so this is an interesting, the way I would figure this out would be to look at the dates over here and how many of those dates are yes, right? Like it looks like all these other rows that are 1-5 are yes, like whenever this is filled out. So those are probably also yeses. But then 1-6, this one says no. So then I would assume everything else that is January 6th is also should be no there. I would assume I would have to go check a calendar, but like whether or not January 6th is a weekend should be true for every line. You know what I mean? Like
I'm just going based off of what you all said about being more specific about
Yeah.
specific tasks, because I just said fix everything.
Yeah.
And maybe this was one I should have been
Yeah, this
more
is a
specific.
totally. This is
Because
this is a good example. Maybe
it wiped it out. Like it just left the Y's and N's, the dates are
took
gone.
everything out. Ah,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, yeah. So then as a secondary step, potentially, like you could ask it to just say, check if the date in column A is a weekday or a weekend. And if it's a weekend, put a Y in column I, right? Like you could give it a little bit more specific instruction of like, go bring, that's essentially like bringing in another data source, right? Like go consult a calendar to see if this is a weekend and give me a yes, no accordingly. I think that should work. It might be a little slow, but you could try something like that. But yeah, wiping out the dates is probably a good place to start in this situation if you don't have any other like info about your data set, which is a nice segue into our next little chunk here, which is about documenting and augmenting your data. So ideally, any data set that you start working with, if you're getting it from another source, you get something called a data dictionary, which is sort of a set of documentation or a common way to think about documentation about a data set. A data dictionary typically contains information like how was this data set generated and who published and maintained it and what does each column mean, stuff like that. If you don't get a data set or a data dictionary with your data set, you can do a couple of things with AI. This is a place where AI should be a little bit more of like your brainstorm partner than your like doing work for you. But one thing you can try is to ask it to generate a data dictionary for your data set. You could try this on the Chicago recycling one that we did earlier. You could try this on the train data, although there's a little bit less for it to go on, to your point about like, what does this weekend flag mean? Like, we don't know. It can kind of make some assumptions in the same way we could like look at it and make some assumptions as to what those fields mean. So these are the sorts of couple of things you can start to ask your data, especially for example, more like our Chicago recycling data where we have a whole website plus a few specific images. Giving a prompt about, help me generate a data dictionary for this data set, it can pull from the website content as well as from the specific data tables that we gave it, right? Depending on exactly how we prompted it. So that will be able to generate a more complete data dictionary for us. Let me see if I still have some tabs a little better. Let me see if I still have this one open.
So with the Chicago website though,
Yep.
since those are images,
Mhm.
should we provide a link and screenshots?
Yeah, this is what I meant about kind of depends how you prompted it. So yeah, for me, I first tried the link. I got an answer that was like, we can't do anything with the link, or like add the images. So I added the images, so it kind of had both in my chat thread, because it was able to pull out, right? If you look here at some of these, it was able to pull out like, what is the Blue Cart program, which wasn't like specifically mentioned on the specific page I gave it, but it was able to figure that out. So I think it's just kind of a matter of like what info you gave it and what order.
So also when you say like using a website, in this case, on this website, it doesn't, or at least on this page, there's not any additional info except for the screenshots.
Yes, but like elsewhere in the like HTML of the page, it's able to glean some other information, right? So all of
So
the
still add it. Okay.
that's what I had done here. Again, it can pull like sort of I think a strength that it has that the average human does not is like you can give it a whole bunch of information and it can pull out like a few useful nuggets really quickly. So it's something like just the definition of like, what does the phrase blue cart mean in Chicago, you know, is somewhere on that website, or like maybe it's pulling in stuff from other websites. I'd have to go check the like citation links specifically. But yeah, in general, like the more information you give it, the more it has to draw. So yeah, this was interesting. I also think it did a pretty good job here of providing a specific note which you would want to see in a data dictionary, which is these values were transcribed from the city's monthly tables. So it's like giving you some idea of what it did, and it's documenting that for you. And then a data dictionary will typically also give you something like this, which will tell you that for each field or column in your data set, what type of data should you expect, what's an example value, and what's like a definition of that term. So in this case, right, it's pretty straightforward. Like, you know, this should be a number and this should be a string because it's the name of a month. This should be a number because it's a percentage, etc. And I'll also note here, this was a data quality issue that it identified from my previous prompt when I asked it about like data quality or inconsistencies. It actually included that in my data dictionary here. So there's this sort of, how is this percentage defined? Seems like it's a little inconsistent, or my Copilot thinks it's inconsistent. I did not fact check that specific issue, but it's pulled that up again here. So this is super helpful piece of documentation to have. I would argue that almost anytime you're working with data and sharing that work with someone else, you should have something like this accompanying your data. But obviously this is a lot of work to create by hand, and often sort of gets left out or left to the last minute. So I think this is a really useful case for using AI to help you generate that. The second thing you should ask it, especially if you're starting from a data set where you don't have a ton of documentation, is what fields in this data set are unclear or lack description, right? So to go back to our Metro data set, right, there's some of those fields there that I don't totally understand. That one geographic marker, I don't know exactly what the definition of that is. If you have a lot of fields in your data set, this is a helpful one to sort of identify what of these are not a commonly recognized number format, right? You might not be able to recognize a latitude, longitude number pattern just immediately with your eyeballs, but the AI would be able to tell you, these are probably latitude, longitude based on the format, right? So this is where it's like a helpful thing to understand what is sort of unclear, that it might be niche or situation specific versus just a format that you might be less familiar with. Okay. Cool. All right. Other things that are interesting to try here are using AI to bring in additional data. We kind of talked about this with the idea of like just checking if the day is a weekday or a weekend or not. That's the kind of thing that you can do on a much larger scale with AI. And this is especially helpful if you think back to our like sort of like cleaning data versus contextualizing data. If you feel like you're missing some context with your data, for example, there was like a seasonal thing or some, you know, some calendar thing, something else going on like that, it can be really helpful to join that. So there's kind of a couple ways you can use AI tools for this kind of thing. You can just try asking it to help you brainstorm what other data sources might be interesting to combine. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
no, it just gave me the fits spreadsheet.
Oh, okay.
And
So it fixed?
yes, and it gave me the raw original information and the clean data.
Okay.
So I can compare
Side by side. Nice. Yeah. So yeah, it's good if it spits the raw one back to you. You also should already have the raw one if you gave it, but yeah, either way, yeah, doing a little bit of side by side of like, okay, do the first few rows match? Did it keep the year correct? All that stuff. Makes sense. Cool. Okay, so that actually didn't take too long to run, all things considered. Cool. Okay, so I asked it this question about our Chicago recycling data set, and it suggested a bunch of ideas to me. One idea that it suggested was weather, data related to weather could be interesting, especially for yard waste in a city like Chicago. So I asked it to help me join on some weather data to this data set. Which is pretty interesting. It had asked me sort of a few follow-up questions about adding that. So I'd encourage you to try that. Either ask it to add some data to our Chicago data set or our metro data set. This is interesting because it can do a couple steps here. It can help you kind of do the like what's available, what's publicly available, what does it know about, which is useful. And then it also helped me go through the formatting of how exactly could I join a data set like weather onto my monthly recycling data, which are kind of two very differently sized data sets. All right, let me see if this is what I still have. Oh yeah, here we go. So it suggested a bunch of stuff for me. Other city of Chicago data, the county that Chicago is located in also publishes data, could have been interesting. Some location data or demographic data from the census. And then seasonal, which was the one that caught my interest. Private, company data if I had access to that. Okay, so give me a bunch of ideas. Again, with like no sophisticated prompting whatsoever, I was like, all right, let's do weather. And it gave me a few different options. It can pull weather data from a few different, or in a few different formats. Weather includes a lot of things: temperature, precipitation, snowfall, number of sort of range of temperatures, all these sorts of data points. So it gave me a bunch of information and it asked me sort of what I wanted added on. And then it gave me some idea of how it might go about doing that. It also gave me a bunch of Python code that I could use to go I could run this code and maybe do this myself. I know some Python, I could probably figure that out, but I didn't want to do that in this case. So again, if it's giving you stuff that you don't know exactly how to use, you don't have to, and it's probably better to not run a bunch of code that you don't understand unless you have some idea of what it's about to do. So I had it, I sort of picked from the options that it sent me, right? I said, all right, this weather data format sounds good. And I would like temperature and precipitation. So again, just being a little more specific about what I wanted it to add on. It did some thinking about this. And yeah, I mean, pretty impressive. The type of thing that would be harder to do without this. I'd have to go seek out my own source of monthly temperature data and pull out the right years and right location, right, and attach that on. So yeah, I encourage you to try that for either of our data sets. See if you get anything of interest. All right, anyone try adding some data on? This is definitely another case where being a little bit sort of selective or giving it a little bit more direction is helpful. I initially tried just yes, add the weather data, and that was going to be a whole bunch of columns. So definitely encourage for this sort of step to start small or start with a few things and make sure that it makes sense to start. Has anyone done stuff like this before, using it to sort of generate some generating documentation or sort of adding other information in? Is that something you've done before, sort of thing? Not so much. All right. Okay, just a couple sort of last points. We talked about sort of a few different kind of categories or phases of the data life cycle, if you will, right? So we talked about sort of collecting data, combining data, bringing data together from multiple sources, or structuring data that's not already structured. All right, that's sort of all of our data collection phase. We talked about the sort of cleaning and contextualizing issues, so using AI to help with cleaning whenever possible. Using some more of the human judgment for more of these contextualizing steps, at least until you figure out what exactly is needed more specifically. And then this last piece that we talked about is a sort of documentation and augmentation of data. I think this documentation piece is especially important if, again, this is the beginning of a larger project. If this is a project you're working on with other people are going to come look at this data or work on this data after you. Any sort of documentation or data dictionary you can provide is not only just a good practice, but it also makes your results more trustworthy, right? If someone sees a term or a column in your data that they don't understand, if they have something they can reference that you've provided alongside that explains what that means, maybe explains what the Chicago Blue Cart program even is, for example, that's going to give them a little bit more trust about where your data came from and therefore the results of your analysis. All right. So those are kind of a few different phases of kind of the data project lifecycle. Obviously, we didn't in this session get into actually analyzing data. I won't totally get into this. People ask me about this a lot, so I wrote up a separate little thing in here, some of which I've already talked about. You can read that at your own pace later if you're interested, but just some ways to think about using AI, especially as it relates to data. Most of the value in any kind of data analysis work comes from trust. It comes from people's ability to trust the results that you provide. And if you've used so many AI tools and so many layers of things that you can't explain or you can't back up, you've sort of lost that trust. And therefore, even if you've done a really cool analysis, it's going to lose a lot of its impact if you can't sort of be clear on where it came from and what exactly it means. So just something to think about as you move forward. As I mentioned, there's also an ever-evolving a number of tools here, especially these sort of more agent-oriented tools. In Copilot, there's a bunch of agents that they actually already have in there that you can try. It doesn't look like they have a ton of data-related stuff in there right now. There's one that helps you write more effective prompts, for example. That could be useful, but that's definitely an area to keep an eye on if you're interested in continuing to use AI in the data space. And then once you are ready to get to this analysis step, there's a lot of tools that have some AI kind of like assistance built in. I personally, for the analysis phase, have found these sort of like built-in tools much more helpful than just like pasting stuff into ChatGPT as far as data is concerned. So I would encourage you to try that. If you were here for any of my workshops on Python or SQL ever, we use a tool called Hex in those workshops. It has a great built-in AI assistant that can help you generate code or generate visualizations in sort of a more context-aware way, which I think is helpful, and again is more like sort of trustworthy than just asking one of the sort of chatbot tools to do that for you. On this same site, I have sort of a little walkthrough of doing some stuff with Python. You don't need to know a ton of Python if you missed that workshop, but just as an example of the types of things that you can do once you've got your data all prepared and ready to do something with. Okay, I think that's all I got for this. I would also just like to add that this is the first time I have taught this specific workshop topic. Obviously, AI is a topic in all like data related conversations right now, but would be very curious to hear if you all thought this was helpful, if this was stuff you already knew or didn't know, or if there's other questions or examples you would like to see in something like this. I've been teaching these for a few semesters now, so if I can make this one better for next semester, I would love any feedback.